If you remember a couple of weeks ago, we looked at the passage that told us about Jesus calling and sending the 12 apostles, his friends and students, that he was sending on a special mission. We saw they were just regular people. They weren't politicians or pastors. They didn't have fancy jobs or a lot of money. They were mostly peasants. They were often people who were overlooked for most things. They could be described with the term that Jesus uses last week, the least, the lowest. People small in status or standing. People who got bossed around. But these are the kind of people Jesus chose to spend most of his time with. And these are the people Jesus said would be like prophets. And if you don't know, prophets were people called by God to remind everyone that we are supposed to love each other. They didn't go to school to be prophets. They didn't apply for the job. They didn't get a license or a special certificate to do so. Sometimes they were trained as religious leaders, but they were also farmers. They could just as easily be a shepherd as a judge. What made them a prophet, always, was that they were a person who said yes, at least eventually, to God's invitation, telling them to go remind everyone that we are supposed to love each other no matter what. Now take a look at this guy here. Hey, do you see that? Yeah, kind of a mess. Now, it can be embarrassing for everybody to point this out, but we're going to have to. Robert, did you just have some cookies? Yeah. Okay, well, you still have a bunch of crumbs in your teeth, and it's a mess. You need to clean that up and try to be less messy when you eat cookies in the future, okay? Okay, good. All right, we'll see you later. Now, it's not always easy to correct people. And if it's about something more significant than Oreos in your teeth, people could also get really angry. I might get defensive. I might try to attack you for even mentioning it. Now, it makes me think of Frederick Douglass. And if you don't know, Frederick Douglass lived in the 1800s. He had been enslaved since he was a child, but he escaped. And even though it was very risky for him, he began working very publicly and in the open to end slavery. He wrote and made a lot of speeches, but there was one that he gave almost 200 years ago about the 4th of July, the birthday of the United States. He gave a speech on what it meant for him to see people celebrating the idea of freedom while there were people suffering because of the sin of slavery. In this speech, he doesn't play both sides or try to describe slavery as something other than a sin or as something other than an injustice. He said very plainly, "The existence of slavery in this country brands your republicanism as a sham, your humanity as a base pretense, and your Christianity as a lie. It destroys your moral power abroad. It corrupts your politicians at home. It fetters your progress. It is the enemy of improvement, the deadly foe of education. It fosters pride. It breeds insolence. It promotes vice. It shelters crime. It is a curse to the earth that supports it. And yet you cling to it as if it were the sheet anchor of all your hopes." This doesn't mean that everybody was eager to listen to Frederick Douglass. In fact, Frederick Douglass made a lot of people upset. But that's exactly what Jesus said would happen. That's what history shows us happening then and now. That's what's going on in this passage. Jesus says here in Matthew, if you are telling the truth and you're all proper and pious and acting like a saint, well, you'll be dismissed as a weirdo. The powerful won't listen to you. Jesus said, if you're more down to earth, maybe rough around the edges, then you'll be dismissed as crude and inappropriate. The powerful won't listen to you. Jesus says you can point out the joy of God's message, make it sound like a song, make it wonderful to participate. The powerful won't dance. Jesus says you can point out the suffering caused by injustice and sin, and the powerful won't mourn. The point is, the people who benefit from injustice and sin don't want to hear about sin. The powerful didn't want to listen to Moses. They didn't want to listen to the prophets. They didn't want to listen to Jesus or his followers, and it continues through history to this day. But rather than that being a source of discouragement, we have a reason for hope. Jesus says that doing the right thing, working for justice, is rooted in love. We know that if we are acting in love, if we are doing especially those things that Jesus showed us to do, like making sure everyone has enough to eat, looking after vulnerable people, taking care of the exposed, then we don't have to worry about anything else. The burden is easy and the yoke is light.